Welcome to Embrace the Spiritual Podcast. Join friends Michelle and Dawn as they share tips on how you too can open your heart, raise your vibration, and reclaim your sovereignty. Hear what they have experienced and overcome in their spiritual journeys while navigating this expansive spiritual multiverse. Discover how they transform their soul lessons from ordinary into extraordinary.
Follow, subscribe, and share Embrace the Spiritual Podcast on all streaming services, including YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Go to embracethespiritual.com for bonus content and a list of upcoming episodes. To book an aura regression, raw Reiki, or Akashic reading with Dawn, visit her website, alchemy-sacredsound.com. To book a quantum Akashic reading, quantum Reiki healing, pet Reiki, or a home and land clearing, visit Michelle on her website at energetisembrace.com. Welcome to our new episode where we're going to talk about being authentic. Wow, this phrase is tossed around so much, and I think it's one of those things that we habitually say, but maybe we don't quite understand it. And we're going to help explore that a little bit more of what we feel it is about being authentic and what that maybe means or doesn't mean. And I think this is a really great transition from that fear-based episode that we just talked about, because a lot of times we aren't authentic because of the fear of judgment. So we're worried about what other people think, and so then we're not authentically ourselves. So what does being authentic mean? Well, here's a few things, and we'll probably hop in and out of this episode with, oh yeah, this is what it also means to me, because I think there isn't necessarily just one definition of it, but it's really about us getting back at a soul level of who we are from source. So when we come into this life, we are at our core a certain being, I guess. And so when we can shed the programming and the fear of judgment from others, then we're truly being closer to what our soul is here to do. Kind of that, that naked, unhindered expression of ourselves. And one of the ways that, like when you look at animals, we were just talking about this last episode, they're authentic. A dog is a dog, a horse is a horse, a tree is a tree. And they embody and embrace what they are. And it is innately intuitive to them of how to behave. Like there's so many things that an animal will do instinctively that they aren't taught to do. And that's sometimes what authenticity can be, is maybe what we're not programmed to do, but what we would do on a natural level. So a lot of times, small children, we're consistently teaching them how to behave, what to say or think and do in certain situations. So we're kind of, that authenticity of who they are is managed, I'll say, a certain way right from birth. So when we think of people that are acting authentically, is they're really just comfortable in their own skin. They feel real and natural. And it's not that they're being, they're acting with compassion and awareness. They're very trustworthy people because they're being real and authentic. And it's not about blurting out these things to people and just saying what you think. That's not being authentic. That's most times you're being rude if you're just blurting out things because it's on your mind. So you can't really train yourself, I don't think, to be authentic or follow a specific technique. It's all about being in that present moment and bringing through your experiences, being vulnerable, being, raw. Yes, maybe I've done some things that are questionable in my life, but it's also molded me to who I am. So if you're vulnerable about that, that's being authentic, because there are so many people that experience things that we do and we hold it in and aren't authentic about our experiences. But if we're authentically sharing what has happened to us, it can actually be healing for other people as well, because, if that person's gone through something like that and look at where they are now, I can do it as well. So it's kind of when your mind steps out of the way and really lets your soul shine through. And you're just being that kindness and present person And I know we're going to have lots of ways to describe this authenticity.
Yes, it's a tough one because I can feel it in my heart what it is, but it's so hard to write it down because I'm not a writer. And for me, it is, am I relaying the information that is true to myself? I have a friend who's always like, I love coming and talking to you because you're real. And I'm, as we're talking, Michelle and I were talking about this, I'm like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just me in, this present moment. And I guess it's because I have a really good system of guidance. My guides are no nonsense. Like, they don't like to dick around. And I have that attitude towards a lot of things. And I will tell you if that is not going to work for me, because my guides are like, nope, don't even look at it. So I have this inner authentic system that is just like, nope. And so a lot of people do come to me and they say, well, what do you think about this? And I do have to be careful because a lot of times they're like so excited and I don't want to be like, I'm sorry, but it doesn't speak to my soul. Because a lot of times just like, and I feel like a big killjoy. But I guess since I have been through so many situations on Earth and outside of Earth, and they're saying you've been out, I have like, Earth is not my home planet. Let's just put it that way. I'm here to do something, and my lessons have been off planet. And because I'm drawing from that knowledge, I know what works for me here and what does not work for me. And when it feels wrong to me, it feels so wrong. It's like this little inner bell going, stop, don't go further. Don't, like, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. And it's really uncomfortable at times because there's certain situations where you have to go through because, well, I've paid for this, a lot of times it's on my husband and I's trips. Like, I get that like warning bell of stuff is going to happen and I'm going to have to be authentic and I might have to tell people, no, I don't agree with that. But that's okay because I'm being me. And I think I'd rather have strong boundaries and be authentic than to be fake and go along with people and not enjoy myself. So it's really having that inner knowing of who you are. And you might not be able to write it on paper because you've had so many life experiences that are going to be able to be shared because it is so beyond our human scope of knowledge. And that's okay because we're all here. We've all been to different places. We're in this Earth universe, in this matrix system, or as Michelle and I were talking earlier, our matrix syndrome that I read her saying instead of what she wrote. And I'm like, we're so using that in an episode. So there you go. But it's being aware that there are other things and having compassion that we're all here. We're all learning on a different level than we have ever learned before and bringing our gifts from where we come from to make this place a better place.
And that's really what we're here for, isn't it? Is making this place a better place. And part of that is, I feel, about having that true compassion. I think that's what authenticity to me really encompasses as well, because sometimes we think we're being authentic because someone comes to us for advice or talking a situation, and we feel like we just have to blurt out exactly what we think we need to say to that person. And sometimes that comes out because we are being a little judgmental in our mind. So we've got an opinion and we need to share it, and no matter what. But I think authenticity doesn't mean we have to always bear it all, right? We don't have to be out there all the time, almost justifying how authentic we are. Because I think that's a cycle a lot of spiritual teachers try to do, is that they feel they have to be out there always saying how authentic and loving they are. And anytime you see somebody always feeling the need to say that, means they probably aren't truly embodying that. Not saying they're not at all, but saying I love you out of repetition or obligation, or you think it's the right thing to say, doesn't make it authentic. If you truly love someone, love is not conditional. You don't withhold love from people. So if you're withholding love from people, you're not being authentic, because as soon as you put conditions on things, if I don't agree with you, I'm suddenly not any value to you anymore. Well, guess what? You're probably not being authentic because you maybe had implicit expectations that you didn't share. And even if you did share, I would have said, no, thank you. But having true compassion for people means that you're sometimes willing to be silent, to say nothing, because it's not about us and what we feel we should or shouldn't say, but it could be not the right time for the other person to hear it. So even if you're in an argument, sometimes you just want to blast them and say something, but it might not be the right time because they're not in the space to hear what you feel they may need to hear. So I think being authentic is us having that observation piece. Observation is huge in everything we do. We're observing what is appropriate in every moment. And as soon as our actions are being dictated by that conditioning or fears or expectations, it's not authentic in my opinion, and from things that I've read about being authentic, because every moment is unique. And so when you have compassion, you're seeing that in the moment without filters, without prejudging things. So sometimes having that true compassion is to find the courage to stand up for yourself and say, this no longer resonates with me, and it's in my best interest to step away. And if the other person in that situation is authentic, they would have compassion and understanding to say, thank you for sharing how you feel, and sorry it didn't work out. Maybe it's a friendship or business relationship. Sorry it didn't work out. Maybe there's an opportunity in the future to do work together again. But if they're not authentic, in my opinion, fear, ego's going to get in the way. They're going to start slinging mud at you because you weren't in line with how inauthentic they were being, quite frankly. So it goes into even that heart discernment of really feeling what resonates with your heart. It's not a matching vibration for you, and it's okay to walk away. That is part of you being authentic. It's also about just being mindful how you're spending your energy and who you're spending your energy with. And it does take courage sometimes. It takes courage to be authentic, to stand up for yourself and stand in your own power, and maybe shift how you're doing things, who your friend circle is, who maybe where you work, whatever the case might be. Is if it's not an energetic alignment, that's okay. You're being true to yourself. And I think that's a big part of what authenticity is.
And that's the hard part, is when you start feeling that things aren't working for you, or just don't feel right in your heart. And you can't put your, sometimes it's so hard, you feel like something is so wrong, but you have to do that mind figuring out of what is going on. And it's having compassion for yourself to be able to say, hey, this isn't right. Something needs to change. I remember a job that I realized that I needed to leave because it was during the times where there were no masks, but this job was making me wear a mask, and to go in through the front door, to walk down a hallway, to go up to somebody's apartment, and then I could take it off. And I was just like, this does not resonate with me anymore. So I tried giving the client 2 months. I said, I would really like it to be 2 weeks, but I said, I will give you 2 months. And she was dragging her feet. And I just finally had to put my foot down and say, this is not working for me anymore. It's just not financially worth it. My drives, because I was not supposed to be at this place, it went from being a 20-minute drive to being over half an hour. And literally it was a town away. So there's always signs of when things need to change in your life because it's not honoring you anymore and your authentic spiritual self. And I knew I had to leave. And I told her, this is just not working out. And I said, I can't come back anymore. And I don't like being that person, but I was not having compassion for myself. And I was not miserable, but I was just not having the joy of going to the job. Because when I go to a job, I want to be happy. I love our podcast because I love Michelle's energy. I enjoy doing this. And that is my authentic self. But if I'm not enjoying something, then why am I there? What am I doing? You have to ask yourself, when you feel that something is off, am I being authentic to myself? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And a lot of times, people start saying, it's not. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. This is not how I'm supposed to be living. And what do you do to start changing that, to start being the authentic person that you need to be? It all depends on the situation. I had a friend who was a nurse who realized, I need to leave my job. I don't like lying to people. And that's what they were asking her to do, was to lie. And she ended up giving her 2 weeks notice. And she's like, it was the best thing that I ever felt that I did. And what a beautiful gift that she did for herself, because she was stepping into what she needed to be doing at the time. And it all depends on the situation. We don't know you, but look, if you're not feeling things are going well for you, are you being authentic to yourself? Are you living the life that you need to be living in this moment in time? If you start saying, am I? And start questioning, it probably means something needs to change. And we want a timeline if it happens tomorrow, but that's not always how it works. So start holding space and love for yourself in your heart and compassion, and know that things need to change, and start looking outside of what needs to happen. My daughter, at times is not happy with her job, and we try to have the conversation of, well, what would you like to do outside of this job? Because it's helping you pay your bills. Is there something that you could be doing that would make you happier? And as of right now, nothing has come to fruition, but she is doing things to make herself happy when she is outside of her work, which is helping her be more authentic to who she is and makes her happier. And yes, it's like she's working 60 hours a week at times, but she's doing what is making her happy. And it actually has made the job easier. She's been going in happier. She has been clearing stuff out, which I think is a great step when you're energetically trying to shift things, is that taking the old stuff out and just having an empty space to work with in your own life. And it may be just a bedroom, but that's okay. So it starts with baby steps. It doesn't have to be done in one day. Rome was not built in one day. Why should our lives, change instantaneously?
And it's interesting how on the collective, some of these things happen in similar time frames to people. So you might notice a friend of yours or a colleague or an acquaintance could be going through something similar, because my daughter is also going through something similar as Dawn's daughter, in that she's looking for something new to do with her work. And she's realized her customer service role that she's had in her various positions, it's draining on her. So it's not feeding her authentic self. And she's been doing a lot of research around things that she loves to do. She loves reading. She loves editing things. Like she reads stuff and she could see how it could be edited and corrected or things like that. So she's actually looking at roles that would feed that joy. And it might mean going back to school for her, and might be a bit of a pay cut. And she said, I'm okay with that, because if it makes me happier, then I'm okay with that. I know I did that years ago. I was in a really good paying job, but I was working so many hours and, driving minimum 1 hour round trip every day to and from work, plus the long hours, was just starting our family. So the kids were young at home. And I chose to take a job that was a significant cut in pay, but it was a 15-minute drive from our house. It ended up I left that job because we moved, but it fed the parts of me that I was looking for at that time. So I think that's really important as well, is when you're doing things that are more in alignment with things you naturally enjoy doing, I think that's awesome. And, your body might be what tells you you're not in alignment. That's what happened to me. I've told this story before in past episodes about my brain going haywire, is the best way to describe it. If my body didn't do that and kind of have that abrupt way of getting my attention, I would have kept going. I could have still been in that corporate type world, but my body was the one that helped me shift out and get on the spiritual path, so I was in more alignment to what my authentic soul and self needed, and what feeds my soul, of helping people and sharing information and being that teacher. So that's what's feeding my soul. So I think what happens is we get into this, what kind of blocks, I guess, for lack of better words, being in our authentic self, is we do fear what others think of us. So we're giving our power away when we worry about that and worry what other people think. Because if you are adjusting your behaviors or things you're doing to keep the peace or to please others so that they accept you, and then you're not being authentic. I'm sorry, but you're not, because you're making your life about a fear of what somebody else will think of you. So that's what I was saying earlier. So being authentic, you can shift out of that by maybe not being in that relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, a personal friendship, a work, a student-teacher, vice versa relationship. That's okay to go separate ways. It doesn't mean it never existed or it was all bad. There might have been a reason why you were in that situation. So take the lessons and learnings from that. Be grateful for what happened because it was that situation for a reason. And maybe you needed to be in that situation to move you closer to being your authentic self. So there are no bad lessons. They're just opportunities for growth. So again, that's that living in fear. That living in fear really holds us back. You get in that negative feedback loop. Your energy gets drained. So if you find that your energy is consistently drained, I know we have to pay the bills, but when we can do something that is more in alignment with what feeds our soul, the money will come. And maybe it's something you just need to do part-time to start exploring it and building that up. Maybe it can't be jumping from one thing to another for you. That's okay. Taking steps towards this will still get you on that path. And so I think what happens too is there's so many of us that are very highly sensitive and in tune to other people's energy. Lots of empaths have incarnated in this life for a reason, for the work that we need to do with the collective. But sometimes we can lose that part of ourselves when we're around other people that are maybe stronger energies. And I'm not saying stronger in more powerful. It's hard to even put a word to it because they're not stronger or better. They might be louder. They might be, command more presence. But as soon as they stop listening to what works for you and it's all about them, then it's not a matching vibration. And you always have a choice. Nobody is ever obligated to stay in any situation. We all have the right to choose for ourselves. And as soon as someone has a problem with it, that problem is about them. It's not about you, and it could be a mother, father-in-law, or step-parent, or whoever. It could be family. We've talked lots about this in past episodes about disconnecting from family for that very reason. Anybody that has a problem with you standing up for yourself, it's really a problem about themselves. It's not you. So whatever gets said, it's about them. It's not about you. So don't allow that, being labeled by others, because that is always a reflection about them. If we label people, it's a reflection of us. If we're judging others, it's a reflection of what we're actually judging in ourselves. So think of that as it's a mirror on both sides. So just really be mindful about the energy we are giving off and the energy we're allowing to come into our space.
And it is so important to be mindful of what is happening, because a lot of people do have strong personalities and they will their selves will bowl you over because they're not in their compassionate heart and they just don't care because of the egos. So it's knowing, and what came up to me when you were talking about with that was I was super quiet, super uncomfortable with myself growing up, and I was bullied a lot. And the times that I chose to stand up against myself, against the person that was bullying me, were those breakthroughs that felt so uncomfortable because I had been in fear, and it was like pop because I had shown my true sovereign self. It totally diffused the situation, especially, like I had a girl who would just come up and be nasty to me in high school. And a teacher was actually there who observed what was happening. And I called her a name that is totally untypical of me. And the teacher came up and started talking to me like, "Are you okay?" Because they could see I was obviously upset. And I started crying. And I'm like, "No, she's been bullying me for like weeks." And they're like, had no clue, because unfortunately, there is just so much people are dealing with, especially in a school system, that you can't be, the eyes on the wall at all times. So if you're younger and listening to this and you see bullying, please stand up to those who are bullying, because there is somebody who is not being heard and is being mistreated. And because of that, I had no tolerance when my children were being bullied. And I said, you know what? It's because they're hurting. Because honestly, these people were hurting and they were not living healthy lives. And so we approach it from a compassionate way. Look at their home situation. Is something happening at home that they're bringing into the school system? Yes, there is. All right. Can we send them love to try to diffuse the situation? There's something you can do to step away from that behavior. There's always techniques to honor yourself and to step away from others taking advantage of you and being authentic to you and knowing, I'm not going to put up with this. And if it comes down to a physical altercation because somebody does not like what you're saying
and they punch first, please punch them back, because I'm sorry, but if it has to come to that, I don't want my child to be a punching bag, and I don't want to be a punching bag either. Like, that is not cool at all. But if there's a way to be able to not throw a punch and still stand in your sovereignty, it all depends on the situation. You got to read the situation. I know there was a situation with my oldest where she took a punch from a girl, and it had a really bad emotional effect on her. We actually ended up going to see a healer to heal it, because it was literally like this person had shoved an energetic knife into her body, and it was causing her digestive issues. And she ended up having my husband go talk to the other dad, and that child got in trouble. So we were happy that that situation had changed, but she had done something because she thought it was right. She was younger. I believe there was underage drinking involved. She was not comfortable with that, but she knew it was wrong, and she didn't want to be privy or around to that. And it was an event that was put on by another mother, and they had no clue that these kids had snuck in alcohol. And I would rather say, hey, this is not right, than to let it go under the table. And she stayed friends with some of those kids, and other kids she did not. But she was true to herself because she knew it was wrong. And I have to applaud that, because how many, 14, 15, 16-year-olds are going to do that and say, this happened, mom, dad, and we didn't blow up, because that would not have helped the situation. So you always have a choice when you're being presented with information. Are you going to lose your temper because you're upset and in fear of something that didn't happen, that could have happened? Or are you going to have that loving compassion for the person who came forward to tell you, hey, something happened. I need to share this with you because I don't know what to do. So I always applaud when people are their authentic selves at any age, young, older, because that's what we're here to do. We are here to help each other grow and to change this whole entire system that we're living in.
It is so true. And standing up for ourselves is so important, because at the end of the day, it's our body. And we've talked about this in fear, how fear, worry, stress, all these behaviors, but they are behaviors because it's how we're responding to situations, affect our body. So when we give away our power to a situation or somebody else, then it's only hurting us. It's like we talked about in our forgiveness episode, is not forgiving a situation or doing about a situation. It's like drinking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. That's not how it works. We get sick when we hold on to things. So when we can shift into that authentic self, then we're helping our body. We're giving our body a break from taking on those feelings of fear of judgment or worrying about, being rejected or any of those things. So one of the interesting things that I came across, and I'll get your thoughts on this too, maybe Dawn, is I read something that said being authentic doesn't necessarily mean being honest. And I thought, okay, I looked into that a little bit more. And I think what that means for me is, because honesty is about us willing and able to share a truth, but whose truth is it? So there's a little bit of we might feel it's the truth of how a situation should be handled, but that's our truth. So sometimes we may have to work in a situation where what we feel is honesty might not actually fit the situation and may not be necessary to share, because that honesty could come with a little filter of judgment, right? I think you should handle it in this way. So I like that I read that, because it made me think of it a little bit different. Because sometimes, like Dawn said, being honest, being real, but we still have to look at how that is happening. So if our honesty is based on how we've experienced life and we feel we're being honest, it might have some filters that we think it's honest, but is it really honest and truthful for that person? So sometimes it can be situational. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I thought it was a different way to look at it, that sometimes we fake laugh at something and maybe it's not a funny joke, or maybe you're being kind over being honest, because sometimes that's what it is. Being authentic is maybe just sharing kindness, because usually if we're being honest, there isn't just one truth about a situation. Maybe that's the best way to put it. And sometimes it's just about showing kindness in the moment, showing that compassion. That's how we can express that honesty and say, you know what, I don't know how I would handle that situation because I've never been in it. Or maybe I have been in that situation and here's how I handled it. So you can see how that's very different in you should do this. Why are you still there? Why are you still in that relationship? Whatever the situation is. But to me, being authentic is sharing what my experiences are and being honest and vulnerable and not being fearful of that judgment of others about my situation, because you could have had a very similar situation with a partner of yours, but no two people are exactly alike. So how can the situation, even if it's a similar situation, it's still not going to be the same because the dynamic between the people are different. I think it's having that compassion and just looking at it from that person's perspective, right? We all have our filters that we're seeing situations, it's perception. We've talked about this in the past, how we perceive situations. So being authentic, I think, is just meeting that person where they are. And maybe the person doesn't even want help. Maybe you're having a situation, they don't want advice, they just are sharing. So just receive that and reserve the judgment, reserve the need to fix something for somebody else, because you never know what their journey is meant to happen like, and you could actually be interfering in their soul's growth by helping them fix something. So sometimes that authenticity about us feeling like we're helping people fix. We're not here to help people fix. Like even as energy workers that Dawn and I are, we aren't here to fix things for you. We're here to facilitate your self-healing and help create that bridge for you to self-heal. That is authenticity to me.
Correct, because it's not about us. It's about you doing your work. We can't do the work. We can help you along, but it's not our work to do, just as my work is not Michelle's work to do, and Michelle's work is not mine to do, but being that bridge. And that's all we are, is an energetic bridge. We're not here to be your savior. You are your own savior. And it's interesting that they said, don't be honest. And I can see where that would come from. But I was also reading that don't give your opinion unless somebody asks for it, which is almost the same thing. Never give information to anyone unless they ask you for it, which is, a great rule, because then you aren't really interfering with their divine plan, because we don't know what other people's divine plans are. We can try to, look into them if they ask us, but honestly, it's none of our business because it's their plan, not our plan. And when you start interfering with other people's, plans, unauthentic selves, it gets complicated. And who needs that complications in their life? Or my life. I love having friends, but at the same time, it's like when people ask me stuff, it's like I have to ask myself, do they really want to know? Or are they just asking because it's polite conversation? And it's a hard, maybe have known the person for years, and I know that family really does not want to know the honest answer, because a lot of people have throat chakra issues because of not being honest with family members. And in the end, it ends up hurting themselves for not feeling that they have a voice. Ever wonder why thyroid issue is on the rise? A lot of people stuff their feelings into that organ and don't honestly talk and don't release it. So when looking at the bigger realm of things, know yourself, honor yourself, and heal yourself. If you feel you're energetically not flowing in an area, your chakras, your body, take a look at it. That is your energetic system saying you need to take a closer look at things. Something is going on. And yes, we don't have to share everything with everybody, but we do have to honor ourselves at the same time. So just because you can't verbally say something to someone doesn't mean you can't verbally say it to them in your head or their higher self. It'd be like, hey, I need to get this off my chest. So you might not be able to say something authentically to your family that you need to get off your chest, but you can talk to their higher self and say, hey, and I do that a lot. I do talk to a lot of people's higher selves, because if I open my mouth, people would be like, what? And they're not open to hearing, but their higher self may be. And maybe down the road, they will be open to it. And maybe never, but that's okay, because it's their journey and I'm not going to interfere.
Completely agree. I think authenticity has so many, spokes in the wheel. It's not just one thing. It's pieces of everything. It's fractals of different things. And at the end of the day, only you can truly determine if you're being authentic or not. How does it feel when you're doing something? How does it feel when you're not doing something? Are you in judgment of yourself? Do you feel like a fraud or an imposter at some times? And, maybe you don't like certain aspects of yourself, but maybe you're being authentic in the moment. So don't judge yourself. Have the awareness, observe what's going on. I think that's such a big thing in anything we talk about or do, is when you can observe without judgment of what's going on, that's how you can shift fears, move towards being more authentic. And at the end of the day, you may go in and out of being authentic. That's okay. It's no one person is all love, light, or perfect. So being authentic to me does not mean that you're perfect or you're some morally high ground. It's just about who you truly are. So be vulnerable, be aware, observe what's going on, and every step towards self-love and self-care will help get you to that authentic self.
Join us next time while we talk about crystal dowsing. What is it? How do you do it? Where can you do it? And other tips and tricks from our first special guest for season 4.
Follow, subscribe, and share Embrace the Spiritual podcast on all streaming services, including YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Go to embracethespiritual.com for bonus content and a list of upcoming episodes. To book an aura regression, raw Reiki, or Akashic reading with Dawn, visit her website, alchemy-sacredsound.com. To book a quantum Akashic reading, quantum Reiki healing, pet Reiki, or a home and land clearing, visit Michelle on her website at energetisembrace.com.
Infinite love and gratitude. Thank you for joining us.